Mr. Mandeville, Dr. Mandeville, I want to ask you, because you're with USGS, and this is so important for our nation's safety, should there be one of these high-threat volcanoes have an eruption. Many of these high-threat volcanoes in the Pacific Northwest don't yet have the adequate instrumentation in place for properly monitoring their status. Why is it taking so long to install these instruments?
Chairman, we've known since the 2005 assessment that we've had these what are referred to as monitoring gaps with some of our very high-threat volcanoes. The first step in the process, though, was to actually identify the threat levels of these volcanoes. The second step in the process is to design the monitoring networks that they require and augment those over the years that have elapsed since 2005. We've got a prioritized list. It's updated regularly, and we've used base funding from our program to actually continue to augment those networks and modernize them. We've had a little help during the stimulus funds in 2009 and 2010 to carry out some of that work, but we've also had budget declines, and we realized we were in an austere environment, and we've had to slow the progress on some of these ameliorations and augmentations to our monitoring networks. This summer, though, we're closing a monitoring gap at Mount Hood, for instance. We're also taking steps to close one of our most significant monitoring gaps at Glacier Peak in Washington State, which is almost unmonitored, almost has only one instrument on it. And we're conducting a LiDAR survey, which is the first step in being able to do the field work and also designing the modern state-of-the-art network that volcano requires because of the threat that it poses to the Pacific Northwest.
Dr. Mandeville, how much does it cost to address what's needed for a single high-threat volcano?
It ranges, over quite a range, for the simple reason that some volcanoes, because of the size of the volcano and the number of instruments that you need to adequately provide enough data to be able to generate forecasts, can range in the order of $1 to $2 million.
Okay.
And there are permitting costs associated with instrumenting the volcanoes as well.
At the current rate of progress that the USGS is making, how many years is it going to take to finish the instrumentation of the high-threat volcanoes?
To finish instrumenting the high-threat and very high-threat volcanoes will largely depend on the resources that we have available to us, but easily it's a 10 to 15-year rollout. However, if our funding is at current levels, it will take much, much longer.
Could you repeat that last part? How long would it take?
If our current budget stays at the level that it is, it would take much, much longer, for the simple reason that we are in the process of repairing networks, for instance, in Alaska, that have been subject to deferred maintenance in the past 3 years.
In numbers of years, how long are we talking about?
We're talking probably a good 20 years.
Okay. Now, this portion of the USGS has a budget of about $23 million, is that correct? Out of a total agency budget of $1 billion. Is that correct? And with all the other priorities, you don't think you can get to it any faster than that?
No, because the other thing I should emphasize is that a lot of these resources also are dedicated to maintaining the monitoring systems that are already in place, which entails substantial expense. And these instruments, the data that they provide, have to be interpreted by professional, scientists on staff, and so we actually have to pay scientists salaries to do these efforts and to advance our knowledge base of volcanic processes in general. So in other words, these are part of our core responsibilities, but to make significant strides in closing the monitoring gaps at some of our volcanoes, we would need additional resources.